This video covers really simple HTTP server with Python. The structure of this video is as follows. Web Client Server Basics. D3 works better with a server. Python Programming Language. Python Simple HTTP Server, and the summary. Alright, let's get started. Web Client Server Basics. At the most basic level, your regular internet works as follows. You open a web browser, you type in an address, the internet figures out what server lives at that address, the browser connects to the server and requests a page. The server then sends back the requested page. In order for the browser to reach a server, you type in a web address. The HTTP part is the protocol. The server name is D3.js.org. The file you are requesting is the home page that lives at the root of the domain. The file is usually the index.html file. The browser takes the name and communicates with a name server. The name server takes in the website name and produces an IP address. The IP address contains the location of the web server. The IP address contains the location of the web server for that web address name. The browser then sends a request asking for a file. The server then sends the page back to the browser. The terminology for the web browser is the client. That said, a client is anything that connects to a server. The IP address is a unique address that is assigned to the server. The address is unique to the internet at any given time. There are cases where IP addresses are dynamically generated and provisioned. For our purposes, the IP addresses are unique. The web address is made up of three parts. The www is the host name, the D3.js is the domain name, the .org is the top-level domain name. The registrars who manage the .org, .com, .net, and etc. control the domain names so that all the top-level domains are unique. The host name of the domain name can be anything that the owner of the domain wants it to be. A different service could be run under each of the different host names. Web servers make their services available to the internet using numbered ports. Each service gets its own port. As the internet has developed, certain best practices have emerged. These port numbers are the common port numbers that most web servers may contain or answer from. D3 works better with a server. D3 works with small and large data sets. Data availability keeps increasing every day. With bigger and bigger data sets, it becomes more and more cumbersome to manually define them in the JavaScript console or in a web page. In order to handle this problem, D3 has functionality baked into it that lets you load data into the browser from a server asynchronously. It does this asynchronously so that the rest of the page can finish loading and display while waiting for the data to finish arriving. In addition to this, the D3 requests functionality will also parse the data for you. D3 has functionality to load in data into the browser from a server. You can request text data, JSON data, XML data, HTML data, comma separated values data, also called CSV, and tab separated values data, also called TSV. In fact, all of the D3.js basic examples use a form of the D3 request to load in the necessary data, which is why this video covers the simplest web server commonly available. Python Programming Language. First, let's cover the programming language the web server we are going to use is built in. From the Python website, Python bills itself as a programming language that lets you work more quickly and integrate your systems more effectively. You can learn to use Python and see almost immediate gains in productivity and lower maintenance costs. It then tells us that Python runs on Windows, Linux, Unix, Mac, OS X, and has been ported to the Java and .NET virtual machines. The website also tells us that Python is free to use, even for commercial products, because of its OSI-approved open source license. The current production versions of Python are Python 2.7 and Python 3.3. They both work very well and are production ready. Some existing third-party software is not compatible with Python 3.3, so they suggest using Python 2.7. I will use Python 2.7 for this video. To get started, please visit this website. Note, you may already have Python installed in your machine. The website will provide more information on how to check as well as install if you don't already have it. The installation of Python is outside of the scope of this video. The Python programming language comes with many libraries built in, just as many other programming languages do. There are many wonderful and amazing things built into this library. The one that concerns us the most right now is the library that provides a simple web server that we can run on our own computer. Python Simple HTTP Server. The Python module Simple HTTP Server defines a very simple HTTP server in the directory in which it is run. It maps the directory structure to HTTP requests. Open your computer's command line interface. In case you haven't played around with it before, this is a user interface in which you type commands instead of choosing them from a menu or selecting an icon. Here we will navigate to the folder that contains the data file that we want to load up. I keep the D3 projects for this video on my desktop in a folder called D3_projects. So I type the command to change directories to this directory. Next, we type in the command to run the simple server. This will start the Python simple web server in my desktop folder called D3_projects. When we press enter, you can see that the HTTP server starts running. It tells us what IP address it is running on and what port the web server is listening to. The 0.0.0.0 IP address is the IP address on the local machine. The port is 8000. Now, let's go to the web browser to look at the IP address and the port. Here we open the Chrome web browser. What we see is a directory listing for the folder. This is expected. If the Python simple server does not find an index.html file, it lists the contents of the directory. We open the text editor and create the web page. You can see that we add in the D3.js script tag in the head of the document. When we go back to the browser and reload it, you can see that the page is blank. Now we switch to video so that you can see when I save/write new things into the text editor that they'll be served from the simple Python HTTP web server. First, we start in the browser. When we reload the browser, the screen is blank. This is because we have not added any text to the web page. Now, let's go to the text editor. This is the file being served from the Python simple HTTP server. We write, this is the file being served from the Python simple HTTP server. This text will show up on the web page after we save the file and go to the web browser and reload the page. We switch to the web browser. When we reload the page, we can see that the text has been loaded. The web server is serving the file as we needed. Lastly, let's test to make sure that D3.js is being loaded correctly. You can see that the D3 loaded correctly because we were able to see the D3 version. And with that, we have started a simple Python web server in our folder of choice. This will let us load large amounts of data easily and seamlessly, and let D3 parse the data that is loaded for us. The summary. This video covered web client server basics, D3 works better with a server, Python programming language, Python simple HTTP server, and the summary.